God will eventually allow you to find faith through personal experiences, because without those kinds of moments, there wouldn't really be any faith to be had. I'm Jillian Rosenberg. I was born and raised in Maryland. I went to St. Louis for middle school, and now I'm at Good Counsel. At Good Counsel and outside, I play tennis. I'm on the varsity tennis team. I really love music. I play in band at Good Counsel. I play horn in the wind ensemble, and I really enjoy spending time with other people.
That's awesome. Good for you. Did I think the tennis won the championship?
We did.
Hey, congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Do you do singles or is it doubled? I don't know how high school
I
tennis works.
Yeah, I play first singles and doubles for the team. We have 6 lines of singles and 3 for doubles, and that's how we compete.
Yeah, but championship to championship.
Yes.
So whatever you're doing, it's working. Let's kind of talk a little bit about your faith journey. You mentioned, attending St. Louis and Good Counsel, both of which are
Mhm.
Catholic schools. What's kind of your faith background been like in general? I assume, you seem to be pretty religious if, you're going to be attending Catholic schools, what's kind of your faith life kind of been like, in and outside of school?
Yeah, so my mom was born and raised Catholic, but my dad was not. But regardless, I've been raised Catholic, so my mom got me into my faith. And of course, as you mentioned, I've gone to Catholic school my whole life because my parents just thought there I could better learn about my faith and exhibit its values. I grew up going to mass every week, but then also at our schools, we would often have like school-wide masses. So I think that's the big thing, I guess. I don't think there was anything else really significant, I guess.
Do you attend mass on a regular basis on Sundays? Or where do you go?
Yeah, I do. I go to St. Louis every Sunday.
Okay, so you've been very familiar with St. Louis. You've been going there for mass and then going to school there.
Yeah, very.
What's your favorite part of the mass? Is it the Eucharist? Is it the singing? Is it the homily? What's your favorite part of the mass?
I really like the reflection probably after receiving the Eucharist, because it's just a quiet time that you have with God, and you can center yourself and just pray about whatever you want to. And like I said, it's just you and God.
So, throughout your life, has there been one like main struggle you've had with your faith and a victory where faith's kind of helped you get through a difficult time?
Well, I'd say my biggest struggles probably came about through last winter and over the summer. I just had some conflicts with other people, and it just had me thinking about, what did I do to deserve these things, and why is God having me face them? Like, what did I do to God potentially to make me deserve these things? And why is he doing this for me? But then also, I think my biggest victories came about, I think the most significant one I can think about is just over the summer, I went on an Acts retreat with St. Louis Parish, and that was a really, captivating experience, because I also went on retreat last year. I went to Steubenville in Ohio, but I just did not have the most positive experience. I kind of got food poisoning, so my parents wanted me to take another retreat. But yeah, on this retreat, I just really felt like I could open myself up and experience my feelings, and just like I could learn from other people as well, and through their experiences why their faith was so important to them, and it was just very inspirational, and I felt like I just made a new family.
What was it about the retreat that kind of allowed you to kind of make those connections?
I'd say we had a lot of time for small group discussions, so I think that intimate environment really helped with us getting to know each other. But also in the beginning of the retreat, we had reconciliation, which was a pretty emotional experience for a lot of people. And then being everyone being vulnerable in the same environment, even though we hardly knew each other. It just really felt like we were all being brought together by God, and it was just a really beautiful experience.
How do you kind of spend time with God? I know you mentioned the reflections in the mass, which is kind of your favorite. Do you kind of like those quiet times with God? That's when you kind of feel the most closest to Him.
Yeah, probably because I feel like I live a busy life, so I just get very distracted with whatever is going on, whether that be like I mentioned earlier, tennis or band or who knows what. But really, I do feel like I could spend more time just in quiet in general because I'm always just on the go. And I think allowing myself to pray more would be beneficial for me.
Do you have a favorite verse or passage?
Yeah, I do. So I'd say my favorite verse is probably Romans 8:18, which is the pain you've been feeling now can't compare to the joy that's coming. And that's a verse I've really looked to in times of difficulty where I just don't really see a way out. But then that verse is just a reminder that there is always light at the end of the tunnel, and that light is God.
Yeah, Romans 8 is a great book. I've actually not heard that verse in a while. I'm familiar with 8:28, all things work together with good for good. And then, you know, later on, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. But, say that verse again, the pain that you experienced.
Yeah, it's the pain you've been feeling can't compare to the joy that's coming.
That's a good one. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Have you been kind of able to see both sides of that, going through the periods of pain and then kind of seeing the joy on the other side so that you can see like, yeah, that verse is that's actually it's not just something Paul said, it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I feel like once you experience that shift once, you realize that it's possible throughout your life. So it's easy to just remind yourself of, say, that verse and just feel it inside of you.
The pain you experience now does not compare to the joy that you will receive. That's awesome. That's a good one. I have to read Romans 8 because there's a lot of good gems in there that I have to, really read and take the time to like analyze it for myself. That's awesome. If someone were to ask you, Jillian, why do you love Jesus? How would you respond to that question?
Oof, man. I think, like I said, I've been raised with it my whole life. So I think it's just what I'm used to, first of all. But I've also seen how he's worked in my life. I feel so blessed to have so many of the opportunities that I do that, I have a roof over my head, a bed to sleep in, food to eat. But then also, what I'm able to do through my school or through athletics, it just all feels like a blessing and something that God has done for me. And with that, I need to make the most out of it.
What can somebody do to kind of make the most out of their faith? Because, I think that's easier said than done. That's a great goal. And I think everybody wants to make the most out of their faith. Is there anything that you do in particular to kind of help you get to that place where you're making the most out of your faith?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a really good question. I think just reminding yourself that God is always present in what we do is so important. Like, for example, I don't have it on right now, but over retreat in the summer, we got these little Fishers of Men bracelets, which are bracelets made out of fishing hooks. So I feel like I wear that as a reminder to do what I do through God's love and rather than like self benefit, for example. So I think by doing something through God rather than yourself is really making the most out of your faith and what you believe in.
Whatever you do for the least of these, that you will have done for me also. That's what Jesus said. And that's a good way to kind of show God's love. How do you see God's love in the world that you live in? How do you see God's love? Is it through your friends, your family, school? How do you kind of see God's love in your day to day?
I see God's love through a lot of people. You could consider, my parents, they're always pretty open to taking care of me and listening to me and helping me out when I need it. My friends, they do the same things. They're just always present. And I feel like that presence can be translated to God and how present He is in our lives. He's always there. And you could compare that to, my parents, friends, teachers. They're all, I just see God's love inside of them so often, and it's amazing.
Kind of backtrack a little bit to tennis because I don't play tennis. I'm not as familiar with the sport, but I know that it's kind of a volley, a back and forth, between you and the other opponents. Do you find that prayer is kind of like that? Is that kind of a conversation between you and God, versus just I don't know if for practice just kind of hit the ball against the wall just repeatedly, but is prayer more kind of like that conversation back and forth? Sometimes it probably does feel like it's one sided, but how do you see any parallels between prayer and tennis, if any?
Yeah, I actually really like what you said. The ups of prayers, like with it feeling like a conversation, but also what you said about how it can sometimes feel one sided. I've found both of those things to be true. So it's funny that you say that. And I also feel like tennis is it's a very mental game, and it's something that you have to keep pushing yourself to fight through, to get through a match without giving up. And I think that's a lot about how faith is. You just don't want to try and give up on it when times get difficult.
The mental game is so important, and I think, at least for me, especially, that's where the enemy will try and trip me up because if he messes up my thoughts, then he's going to mess up my behavior. It's all a cycle: thoughts leading to behaviors leading to actions, and actions leading to habits, and habits leading to a lifestyle. But it all started with the thoughts. How do you kind of keep your mental focus, whether it's in tennis or in life in general? How do you kind of keep your focus and not be distracted by everything else that's going on around you?
Yeah, it's difficult, like you said, but I try and, for example, I make sure to go to bed earlier if I can, just because I feel like I'm more focused once I've slept. Like you will never catch me past 11 doing schoolwork. I'll always wake up in the morning to do it when I feel more energized. So I feel like just taking time to also rest is what will allow you to focus later on, because you can't just keep running on empty.
And that's what God calls us to do too. God calls us to rest. He rested after creating the whole earth. He rested. I think that's something that we as a society don't do as well a job as we should, because we're always go, go, go. In your case, I would be cramming out my work at 11, 12 at night, versus going to bed and getting the rest that my body needs. So I think I'd like to, improve upon, balancing my life so that I have time to rest and I have time to get everything done, which could also be some time management stuff, but then allowing my body the time to rest and recharge so I can be at my best. That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between tennis and the faith life, which is pretty cool, I'd say. To kind of wrap things up, Jillian, you've obviously been in the faith your whole life, been raised Catholic, been going to Catholic school and mass. What might you say to someone who may be, on the fence about their faith, or maybe have kind of started but have kind of, slipped away? Life has maybe gotten to them a little bit. What might you kind of tell them?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I just tell them it's okay. It's normal to doubt, and that's why it's called having faith. It's not necessarily something based on, yeah, this is 100% true, everything is proven and all of this. It's about having faith and believing in what you want to believe in. But also, I believe that God will eventually allow you to find faith through personal experiences, because without those kinds of moments, there wouldn't really be any faith to be had. So I feel like that's very intentional.
Yeah, without those low moments, there's no faith to have. Your verse. If you don't experience the pain and see the joy on the other side, you won't know what the joy is if you haven't gone through that pain. And I'm
Yeah.
sure the joy responds to the level of pain that you went through. So that's really when you can start to feel the effects of faith working in your life. That's awesome. It's a good response there. The last question I have for you, I call these I will statements. Something small that you can kind of do to improve in your faith life in the short term. So what may be one I will statement, of something that you'd like to improve in your own faith life in the short term?
I think what I kind of alluded to earlier is just taking more time to create like quiet spaces that I can just reflect act on and be with God. So I think that would be a good I will statement. Just I will make more time for God in my own personal life. I think that's just really important and something that I need to go about doing, especially in these next, few weeks, like you said.
Yeah, setting aside that time for God is important. I would like to improve on that myself because, again, I'll busy myself with everything that I have to do, even though really, how much of it do I have to do at that particular time? When God is the person behind all my everything that I do. So the least I can do is give him some time for him alone. So that's a great first step for sure. Hey, Jillian, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit about your faith and all the great gems that you shared. That verse is awesome. One more time, just so I can really instill it in my head. What's that
Okay,
verse
yeah,
again?
of course. The pain you've been feeling can't compare to the joy that's coming.
The pain that you've been feeling cannot compare to the joy that's coming. That's awesome. That's a good one. I got it. I'm gonna memorize that. I'm gonna put that to heart. Romans 8:18.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that whole book is a great book, but the pain you're experiencing cannot compare to the joy that you're feeling. That's a great verse. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Jill, and hopefully we can
Thank you
bring you
so
back.
much. So nice.
Yeah, hopefully we can bring you back soon to keep this conversation going.
Yes, thank you.